It's your boy Young Love, I give him that time. Pancho legs stay the punchy America, Banyi Dwal, Pancho legs stay the punchy America, Banyi Dwal, Banaban, walk on the lake, Kankara, what on a watching, Oga, level leg, year, pow, leg, Panda with ya, Panchi America, Banya Dwalabano, Chingatonga Pandon, could you ever buy a check out, Papu Panda Jiro, what there be Dwalaventing. Stay the punchy America, Banyi Dwal, Banaban, Pancha leg stay the punchy America, Banyi Dwal, Banaban, walk on the lake, Kankara, what on a watching, Oga, level leg, year, pow, leg, Panda with ya, Panchi America, Panya Dwalabano, Chingatonga Pandon, could you ever buy a check out, Paku Panda Jiro, what there be Dwalaventing.
Thank you so much to our viewers across the globe, wherever you are tuning in. Welcome to Lagos State Media Beyond Boundaries. It has been a quite long, almost 3 weeks, without talking to you and without inviting some guests to come and talk to us. And today is a World Peace Day, and countries such as South Sudan knows what peace means to them. And that is why we came out today and invite our usual guest, the prominent activist, Mr. Edmund Yakani, to come and talk to South Sudanese and other nationals in this day of world peace. Mr. Edmund, it was long, my brother. How are you doing?
I'm fine. And thanks for hosting me in this important day, International Peace Day. And it's a day that we all aspire to have peace in our country anyway. So I'm fine.
That's great. We are happy to host you once again, especially on this day. And you know, many South Sudanese have been yearning for the last almost 8 years, seeking for peace. And to the extent some of them are asking, where is this animal called peace? Where is it hiding from? Because other countries that went through such challenges before are enjoying peace. And South Sudan sometimes seem to some extent like we are actually trying to arrest this animal called peace. But within no time, the thing is not getting well along with South Sudanese. That's why we are so happy as Lagos State Media to host you and talk to us. Not only that, being activists, but as the executive director of CEPO, and you have done a lot of tremendous job in regard to the peace, especially across 10 states rather, and you have been campaigning and advocating for peaceful coexistence of societies and especially pastoralist communities in our country. So it means a lot, and we really need you to talk to South Sudanese. Kindly, Mr. Edmund, can you brief us exactly in regard to the peace agreement which was signed in 2018 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, by the two South Sudanese rival groups or the partners to the agreement? And that agreement gave birth to 5 vice presidents and the president himself, total to 6 members in presidency. And since 2018, 2019, 2020, up to 2021, 22, South Sudanese need to know, because there is a bit relative calms across the country, but sometimes there are pop-up of some conflicts across the regions. Kindly, can you tell us thereafter? We will move to the roadmap, which was the recent launch, and you were one of the participants in that occasion. And then we look at the roadmap in its totality and look at these few weeks, what the roadmap has done so far, evaluate it, and then we broadcast or maybe forecast in the future what roadmap will mean to South Sudanese. Thank you, Edmund Yakani. You can take the floor.
Thank you, my colleagues in Lex Media, for hosting me after a quite number of period. And I remember one of our show was interrupted when we were supposed to speak about the impact of the floods, which is now becoming a big challenge. And I was interrupted because I was called for a presentation on the floods to really make sure that I also express my opinion on what's the best way forward in mitigating the floods, and that's in a regional meeting in Addis. So I was interrupted in the middle when I was having an interview for that. So apology to your audience for that particular show. Before I could go ahead and let really register my apology that day we were supposed to talk about the floods, which the floods now very huge, and I will not end up this show without having updates on the floods because I've been closely following the issue of the floods. So to begin with, first, I would like to say Happy International Peace Day. And we hope to have also peace in South Sudan. As you are aware that when we talk of peace, peace does not mean absence of arms. Peace means a lot. Peace means economical prosperity, development. Even I will use a simple way by saying, moving from Juba to my village is a peace. Moving from my village to my friend's village is a peace. Moving from my friend's village to my friend's villages is a peace. So peace is beyond stoppage of arms struggle. Peace is a broader definition. So Happy Peace Day. And of course, as we speak around peace, is that there's a key principles that I would like to set them here as a benchmarks. We'll never have a peace if we don't own the peace. And the ownership of the peace is by demonstration of a goodwill for that peace. So that's one thing I like to make as a key message. The second message is that we cannot also make peace prevail in our society if we don't embrace the culture of tolerance and diversity, because tolerance and diversity, it cements the linkages and the net among the 64 tribes that we have that define the nation of South Sudan. That's my second message. My third message is that peace can only prevail when you stand up wherever you are as a nationalist for the nation and for stopping the principle of animal farm to be practiced in South Sudan. And you know that principle of animal farm, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. We need to convert that to say all South Sudanese are equal, no other South Sudanese who are more equal than other South Sudanese. So we are equal. So that means if we are trying to stand up as South Sudanese to make peace prevail in South Sudan, then I'd like to end with this sentiment, if we can borrow from our fellow Africans' philosophy, that we need South Sudanese solution to South Sudanese problem with South Sudanese money. So if we want to make peace to prevail in our country, the people who we are going to blame for absence of peace in our country, it's the members of the highest institution that run the day-to-day business of the government, who is in charge in state affairs, and that mechanism or that instrument, it's the presidency. So we blame nobody for violence that are persistently continuing in our country, except the presidency, because they have a constitutional mandate at their disposal to use any possible means, as it's a lawful means, to make peace prevail and to resolve their political grievances in a non-violent way. So that's the message I'd like to start. So today is an International Peace Day. And one of the things that today I would like to share with everybody or your audience who are listening to me, we are in Yakron Cultural Center celebrating the International Peace Day. So I have few observations on today in Juba when we're marking the International Peace Day, where the guest of honor is the first vice president. First, the public turnout in the hall was very low. Why? Is an indicator that public have lost trust and confidence in the process of transitioning the country from violence to peace through the implementation of the revitalized agreement. And this goes back as a message to our political leaders that if they don't renew their political commitment and their political pledge to transform the situation in our country from violence to peace through the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement, then in daily count, they are failing. Their only success is to implement the agreement. So that's one observation I've seen in Yakron. And today I was given chance to speak, and I remember I deliver a message where almost every point I deliver, First Vice President Dr. Riek Machar have to respond to. And key messages that I delivered. One, it is for this country to be peaceful, we need a change of political attitudes. Because if our leaders does not change their political attitudes, we have nowhere to implement the revitalized agreement. The revitalized agreement only is implemented when a political attitude change. And the political attitude change is what? It means we need to accommodate each other. We need to adhere to political discipline. And two, we need to put priority in terms of our resources to the peace agreement. Three, we need to gain trust and confidence to work together. So that's one of the messages I deliver. And of course, I deliver a message around the latest bit of an exercise, though we cannot say have met a standard. The graduation of the unified forces in Juba, in Torid, in Meridi. So it means the Bell of Equatorial Region Unified Forces are already graduated. So we're expecting the next rollout is the Unified Forces graduation in Bahar Ghazal in Equatorial Region. Then from there, they go for redeployment. But I've reminded them that we hope there will be no delay in redeployment because our fears is that this graduated Unified Forces is likely to be delayed in terms of redeployment because unification of ranks is another next step that is going to delay redeployment because everybody wants to know what rank do I deserve in terms of command and structure and where am I going to be redeployed. And I challenge them that if there's any redeployment of the unified forces, should not be redeployed on the principle of ethnic manipulation and political manipulation. I hope that the redeployment is done on the principle of merits, on the principle of increasing the state capacity to provide protection of civilians. Of course, Riek have responded to that problem. Politicians, now you are enjoying good money in your pockets. Can we turn that game around and take also good money to the pockets of the soldiers? And once you put good money to the pocket of the soldiers so that you don't misbehave, then take the soldiers to farm. When the soldiers farm, they respond to food insecurity. So those are some of the messages that I deliver today in the Nyakron. And the theme of today is something I'd like to bring to your audience. Of course, we are aware that the global theme of the International Day for Peace is end racism, build peace. But in South Sudan, it was customized in end ethnic discrimination and build peace in diversity. Of course, for us to build peace in diversity, for us to end ethnic discrimination, it means we must take a step that all ethnic groups in South Sudan have equal political, civil, and every rights. So even if they are 10, but as they represent an ethnic group, they deserve equal respect like a million or million plus population of a particular ethnic group. So it means ethnicity shouldn't be used as a tool of discrimination. And the challenge we have now, after we formed the revitalized government of national unity, most of our political leaders like to embrace combination of ethnicity in their institutional setup. If you go to our 35 ministries today, around the minister, you can't see diversity that we're using for building peace. We see ethnic discrimination. So sometimes you go to a minister's office, people have to use their own dialect, while you are a South Sudanese of a different dialect. Sometimes you become suspicious because they are speaking a language that it is not accommodative, and you start asking, are they talking good about me or are they talking bad about me? Even if they're talking about lunch, you become suspicious because you don't hear the word lunch sounds to you familiar or the word water. Maybe if you hear the word pew, then say, okay, pew is somewhere. But other statements, you may suspect that, no, maybe they're talking ill of me. Why am I visiting this office? And while you are a national. So that's a challenge that our political elites need to take over. And the question of tolerance also is something that today we raise it up, that the revitalized peace agreement cannot be implemented until we tolerate each other. Because if we don't tolerate each other, it's going to be problematic. And why I use tolerance, you have seen the consequences of lack of tolerance from the Kitgwang group when they break out of the IO and they split up. Of course, money can make you sell out the culture of tolerance. So they have sold their tolerance by accepting money to defect out of the leadership of Dr. Riek Machar, they form Kitiguang. Now again, inside themselves as Kitiguang group, the element of tolerance, because they fail to accommodate tolerance with IO under Dr. Riek Machar, they break into the group of Simon Garwich and the group of Olony, and they don't tolerate each other. They're now confronting itself. And if you see the history of our political establishments are product of lack of tolerance. It was one party, split into two, keep on splitting into two, keep on splitting. So there's nobody who will be a political elite who can stand before me as South Sudanese say that we have established a political movement or political entity that we remain as one. And I can give you quite a number of stories. SPLM is split to 5, and later on we have SOA split into SOA for peace, SOA not for peace. Later on, SOA not for peace went and formed SOMA. They break into SOMA, Thomas Zero, Thomas, SOMA Malong, now Kitiguang went on, now it became Kitiguang, Simon Garwich, Kitiguang Olony, and I'm quite sure we're going to see more. And even within the OPP, they have break into OPP in the government, OPP outside the government, OPP break into OPP umbrella under our Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Peter Mayen, another OPP under somebody, but then later from WOW, Joseph Okel. You know, our political establishment are not established on principle of political tolerance and accommodation and embracing ethnic diversity. Our political establishment is that when you see the queue is long, you accuse your brother in front of the queue and you introduce your own queue where you are the first to start. And we have seen that. You have seen shifts and defections of political elites from one group. And this is the disease. This is the virus affecting the revitalized peace agreement. The only people who enjoy the revitalized peace agreement until it comes to an end, it is His Excellency President, because his name is automatically named in the revitalized agreement, and First Vice President, his name is named automatically in the revitalized peace agreement. So these two, President and First Vice President, enjoy the privilege that their names are mentioned in the article of the revitalized agreement. Otherwise, some people, if we could have tempered, they're going to replace them. Even you have heard of what Simon Garwich did, is that Riek must be replaced, so he's going to replace him. But while the print hard copy of the peace agreement have mentioned Riek as a First Vice President. So this is one of the challenge among South Sudanese. And of course, I can't hesitate. This has come very clear among our social media players. Now we have turned social media to a social media of South Sudanese, soon to a regional social media, soon to an ethnic social media, soon to a clan social media. So we are integrating, we are breaking our social fabric. Why is that? That's the results of the following. And this is the reasons why the revitalized agreement was signed. One, when we don't respect constitutional governance, and constitutional governance means a lot. It means respect the term of your office, respect the democratic transformation of power from one group to another group, respect the human rights, respect citizenship, that between citizens and leaders is a social contract. Respect that social contract. It means respect citizens to provide check and balance, and that check and balance can be expressed by you respecting freedom of expression. Whenever citizens express themselves, you shouldn't equate that as opponents. You should tolerate that. So these are all the products that have led us to, in 2013, to go to the bush. So that is where the revitalized peace agreement challenges is. Yes, in the security arrangement, we have seen graduation of unified forces from the Equatorial region. As I said, probably next week, we're going to see graduation of unified forces in Upper Nile region and in Bahr el Ghazal region, which is a good move. But the question comes, if you don't have a political will and political commitment that you want to meet national consensus principles, those graduation, it means nothing. In the sense of you don't change your political attitudes, it means in the way that you don't accommodate other voices that might have been a challenging voices to your authority. That may be true. And you have seen, I can give an example, you have seen the defection among the SPLM-IOs, those cross from Kitiguang to SPLM-IO under Dr. Riek Machar. Recently, some cross from Dr. Riek Machar go back to Kitiguang. People are opportunists. People are looking for accommodation. People are looking for position. People are looking for quick way of making money. People are not looking for positions to deliver service to the citizens under constitutional governance. And this is the disease of our political elites. They keep on changing their colors. All our political elites today in the peace event, I characterize them as chameleons. None of them is clear and straightforward. A politician can be a politician without a state power, but our politicians are opposite. Nobody say I'm a politician without any political title like honorable minister, honorable parliamentarian, or brigadier general. You can be a leader without being a general, without being an honorable MP or honorable minister or honorable commissioner or honorable whatever you want to be. You can be a politician, you can drive a political agenda, but that's not the mindset of a political elite. Because why? Our political establishment is set on ethnic competition of state power and resources. And that's what take us very bad. And that's why the theme of today for me was a very good theme that the government of South Sudan have chosen, that end ethnic discrimination and build peace in diversity. So what does that mean? That means the values of the revitalized peace agreement. If we're arguing on the reforms of the revitalized agreement, nobody should equate that argument on ethnic line, because the revitalized agreement does not represent ethnic interest. The value of the revitalized peace agreement, it represents a national consensus to bring the South Sudan that we want. It's a South Sudan of democracy, South Sudan of good governance, South Sudan of rule of law, South Sudan of respect of human rights. That's one of the things that we need to bring. And today I made it very clear to His Excellency First Vice President. I say one of the biggest problems is in relation to freedom of expression and sinking civic space is that the junior officers of our security institutions are more stubborn than the senior officers. But also, unfortunately, the senior officers never hold the junior officers accountable on their misuse of the law or abuse of authority. And I ask His Excellency First Vice President, I say, there's a need for us to have a complete national complaint mechanism on the behaviors of our security members' institutions, on the way how they conduct themselves. That's one thing that I told them, because one of the things that some of them are using the whistleblower, the whistle that they are supposed to be for traffic police officer for disciplining driving, that whistleblower become a source of income. A traffic police officer come to the street, whistle one for breakfast to the house, another lunch to the house, another whistle is for the supper, another whistle is for his beer or his soda to his pocket. And some of them who are in uniform in military use roadblocks to create access to income. This is simply because they are not be paid good money. And I told them, pay the soldiers good money, send them to farming, because politicians have good money and politicians are minority who take the lion's share of the national budget. And you have civil servants who are majority, have a very thin share of the national budget. So for me, in the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement, right now the challenge before our leaders are as follows, so that I can move to the other aspects. One, for us to genuinely implement the revitalized peace agreement, the political elite, and specifically the members of the presidency, need to take responsibility. And today, as they were marking International Peace Day, we have been seeing the trend of argument is around the better relationship between His Excellency President and First Vice President, as if other vice presidents are completely clean. No, other vice presidents also, we need to challenge them. If His Excellency President and First Vice President does not have a trust and confidence, now it is a responsibility of the other members of the presidency, who are like around 4 of them. They're supposed to play a big role to nurture confidence between president and First Vice President. And of course, that if you see the representation there is regional. So as we're marking International Peace Day, His Excellency Wanega is not clean. His Excellency Abdul Bagi Ayi is not clean. Her Excellency Rebecca Nyandeng is not clean. His Excellency Taban Deng is not clean. Why? Because they are supposed to play an instrumental role to ensure that there's a trust and confidence among the 2 first principles of their cabinet, which is for president and First Vice President. So we also need to task them responsibility to nurture a trust and confidence among, because otherwise their silence means also they are fueling more division among the 2 principles. So for me, those are some of the messages that today we convey in the International Peace Day. But of course, also we need to see our parliament, our parliamentarians need to behave well. Some of our parliamentarians have the traditional old attitudes that when you speak negative against one party, then the principle of your party will embrace you. Like if you are IG, if you speak against the IO, then president will say you are a good leader. If your IO speak about the SPLM, then Riak will say you are a good leader. If you saw you speak against SPLM and IO, then Abdul Bagi will say you are a good leader. If this can't help us. And this is one of the things that the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement is going to face a challenge, because the MPs that we have in the parliament, they are more lean to the political caucuses that represent their parties than the best interest of the country. The best interest of the country is that even if you belong to party A, if party A is not doing something good, by the virtue of being as an MP, as a lawmaker, you're supposed to challenge your own party to tell them, look here, you are not doing something good, and you need to go public on that. So our MPs also need to change their attitudes from favoring their party interests to stand up as a parliamentarian and favor the best interest of the nation. And the best interest of the nation is what? Is peace and stability. The rest we shall complete them if we. So that's challenge the revitalized peace agreement. And today we alert them that, look here, our MPs are going for recess. They are going to recess. They're going to go for recess right now. And they are going to go for recess. We're telling them, before you go for recess, do the following. One, make sure that all the pending amended legislation in the parliament are enacted. So that when you go for your recess, you're going to disseminate them. Because why should an MP go for a recess with an empty briefcase? An MP is supposed to go to recess with a full briefcase. What are the things the briefcase will expect? One, we expect a genuine budget that is citizen interest. We expect that they have passed laws, because performance of the parliament is measured by how many legislation that promote democratic governance and good governance have they passed. So they have pending laws. So we're telling them, please enact those pending laws. Pass the budget and let the budget 50% be focusing on the agreement. That's the most important thing. Three, make sure that some of the key institutions that are political, and we told them 4 institutions are very important for the MPs to ensure that the presidency reconstitute before they break into recess. And also the presidency should reconstitute before they roll out the extension of the transitional period. What are those institutions? South Sudan Political Parties Council, National Election Commission, National Constitutional Review, and then the Judiciary Commission. These 4 institutions are very important to roll out the rest of the political milestones. And today we are aware that the National Security Act is subject for a debate among the presidency, and it was referred to Ministry of Justice because of those clashing power between the National Security Act, South Sudan Police Act, or maybe South Sudan People's Defense Force Act. So those legislation, we told them, before you end the transitional period, please deliver them, pass them, so that when you go for recess, because if they go for recess, it's 3 months. It means they're going to have November, December, and January in recess. They're returning in February, which is the expiration of the transitional period. And they're expected to do miracles in February. And February is not anything. It's only 22 days out of 28 days. They have to administer that. So we're telling them, please, before you go for recess, deliver the key milestones. Ensure the first batch of the graduation is done, they are redeployed, and ensure that also the political events are delivered. So that's what we told them. Of course, to conclude, we cannot have peace in South Sudan if we see our citizens in the region of Upper Nile are dying as if there's no government. The silence of Juba is not really pleasing over what is happening between the factions of Kitgwang under Johnson Olony and Simon Garwich. And you have realized recently, the clashes between the two is driving us towards elements that we don't want to supposed to experience in our society after we have seen what happened in Rwanda. It's driving us to genocide. It's driving us to crime against humanity. Already we have seen atrocities happening. IDP camps have been attacked and everybody is escaping responsibility, blaming the other for IDP's classes. And we have seen now the dimension of the clashes in some parts of Upper Nile between Johnson Olony and Simon Garwich taking an ethnic targets. So there's a clashes now between Sholok become a target because of Johnson Olony, and or somewhere other tribes who are non-Sholok are target because of the other identity they have. And this, for me, it's a proxy war. What is happening in Upper Nile? I don't really support any cost of that war. The cost of that war is meaningless. The cost of that war is meaningless. Targeting specific ethnic population, it's a complete demonstration of a culture of no accommodation, a culture of discrimination against that particular group you are targeting. So for me, Johnson Olony and Simon have equal responsibility to be held accountable in a competent court of law for making atrocities happening in Upper Nile committed by their forces and for driving the region of Upper Nile to likelihood of a genocide, to a possible genocide that is happening in Upper Nile. So both Simon Garwich and Johnson Olony, the best way they can resolve their differences, which does not benefit us anyway. Their differences it has nothing to do with democracy. If the differences is connected to ethnic competition over the ownership of Upper Nile, then dialogue could have been the best. And remember in the revitalized peace agreement, how much slow it is. We already have a provision about the issue of land. And I know that the question of the land of ownership in Upper Nile is a big issue. But we can't use that debate or we can't use that competition to claim a population of a particular ethnic group and to wage an ethnic war. So for me, I don't blame ethnic identities in what's going on now in Upper Nile. I blame people who sponsor proxy wars, and I blame people who respond to funding that are to support proxy war by accelerating proxy wars. Because what's happening now in Upper Nile is a complete proxy war, and it's a complete violence that is geared towards something that does not benefit us, except we can equate by human rights atrocities, we can equate by crime against humanity, we can equate by possible genocides happening in Upper Nile. And this is whose benefit? Neither benefit any ethnic identity that are in conflict right now in Upper Nile, simply because we have a gun class that you can name them as Johnson Olony gun class, Simon Garwich gun class. Soon they'll have other gun class merging out of that term. For how long will gun class remain as a curse to our country? For how long will a gun class force our citizens not to study, not to have a good health, to be forced to a water point where you murder them and you don't count the dead bodies? So for me, Johnson Olony and Simon Garwich have a primary responsibility to stop the violence or dialogue as we're marking International Peace Day. And one of my appeal I made today in Yakron is that I hope that when come 2nd October next month, which is an International Day for Nonviolence, we want to see that Johnson Olony and Simon Garwich have committed themselves to resolve their differences through a nonviolent way. Because I know that some of the factors might have forced them to clash, besides the cover of competition over ethnic control of the Upper Nile. Also, there's a resource competition over there. Some of them are resource-driven clashes that have nothing to do with democratic governance, with transparency. It has nothing to do with the respect of human rights. It's more of competition over hegemony and political ego. Political ego, I must be seen as I am. So that's what happened. So one thing that I can conclude with Kitigwang, I have seen this document. This document is going on in several media houses. And this document, it amplifies the voice of Odigo Onyoti, saying His Excellency President Salva and Riek Machar are in discussion in bringing an end to Kitigwang crisis. And also we have seen in several media houses, Simon Garwich saying anything to do with the resolution of their disputes. He doesn't want to see His Excellency First Vice President involve Dr. Riek Machar. So what does it mean? It means this fighting is aligned between two names, and the two names have their own enemies. In any way, if you talk of Simon Garwich, if you talk of Johnson Olony, and equate them to His Excellency President Salva and His Excellency Vice President Dr. Riek Machar, are they new? They are connected. They know each other. So sometimes citizens of this country are suffering because of personal grievances that our leaders have towards each other. So why do you want to make your personal grievances as a political objective of murdering us, chasing us to bush? And when you agree, resolving a political grievance, us. So why should we pay cost for that? So find your way. Either you go to heaven, to God, if you're able to go visit God, God resolve. You come back to us as unionist, as nationalist, and stand for the nation. Because what we want is that we need nationalists who stand for the nation without any form of discrimination. Happy International Peace Day, Lex Media. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Brother Edmund Yakani, for that wonderful remark and thoughts around the peace building in South Sudan. Basically, you have actually mentioned the critical point that the peace cannot prevail if it is not owned by the citizen. That is the point. South Sudanese, there is this assumption that government is the one that should bring peace to the citizen. But the question still remains, when our government was fighting for our independence, all these villages across southern Sudan by then were enjoying peace. And then what triggered this violence among themselves? And for the recent past, at least for the last 1 to 3 weeks, we have not had anything to do with the Eastern Equatoria and also Jonglei, especially the side of Pibor administrative area, and Jonglei State, especially Bor Town, and also the side of Western Equatoria of Meridi. The only issue now is the issue of Upper Nile between Kitgum factions, which you have mentioned some points in regard to that. But before we move to the issue of Johnson Olony and Simon Gatwich in Upper Nile region, you have tied things to do with our politicians. Our politicians are jumping from one party to another party. And our politicians are relaxing once they secure their position. Do you believe, Mr. Edmund, that the leaders that we have now in our nation from two houses of our parliament, the upper house and the lower house, plus the executive and the judiciary, do you believe are these politicians or they're just opportunists, as you put it before? Otherwise, what they said is always contradictory to what they believe and what they act upon. Look at the title or the themes of the celebration today. It is so educative, and if anybody get that theme, the person may appreciate it like what you did. But in the mind of the politician, do you think they believe by that? Thank you.
You know, my brother, I took a time. I took a time to ask myself a question where I was looking for an answer. The generation of the current political elites, who are they? And what society of South Sudan have they been living in? And what might have been a civic orientation that shaped their current political attitudes? My findings is really offering me a very big challenge of understanding of what went wrong with these leaders. First, this is my findings. Most of these leaders, they have been students in 3 or 4 secondary schools. Lubek Secondary, Juba Commercial, Local Secondary. Then you added later on Lower Secondary. So we wish that they could have been more united and more working together than our generation, where me and you might have studied somewhere in the diaspora, I'm studied somewhere. You are either in refugees camp in Kakuma, I'm in refugees camp in Nuba Mountains or in Sudan. We found ourselves, me and you found ourselves through the social media. And later on, identity, nationality make us to come together. But 3/4 of these leaders, they have studied together. For example, let me give an example. You come to realize that late Joseph Okel was a teacher to Martin Elia Lomuro, who is a Minister of Cabinet Affairs. So when I was in Lake State event of Thanksgiving for Governor Ring, like almost everybody who have a general title, a ministerial title or honorable title are alumni of Rumbek Secondary School. Then I'm asking myself, what went wrong with them? Anyway, these are people who have studied together. These are people who have lived 3 years, cross-ethnic identity. Example, you live Meridi, you're in Rumbek Secondary School, and you have never come to Meridi all these 3 years of secondary school. And remember secondary schools those days. I don't like the secondary of today. The secondary that you go farm together, you go and drink together. But then party is a social cohesion event. Going for a party with the pickup, with a party with that particular what do you call cassette music, where you play cassettes, you don't play CDs, where somebody have to roll with a pen, and you see the DJ is not like a DJ of today. It's a DJ which is manual. So these prayers, all of them are religious. Even somebody was telling me, like, when he was in Juba, one is more religious than the one he knows now. So these people have opportunities of the past of being nationalist than our generation. Now, that's one of my findings. What went wrong with them? what went wrong with them, because some of them are teachers, some of them are students of the teachers, some of them are colleagues of classmates. So if you see 70% of our current political leaders, they come from that background. Second thing I investigated, have something went wrong with the struggle of 1964 until 1972? I came out with some few findings. Something went wrong. What went wrong is that they developed political enmity, rivaling over the little size of the government, because by that time, government is a lean government, and there are many. Some of them are coming from seminary who diverted to become bishops and the archbishops and whatever cardinals or seminarians. They are now back to seminary. They have obtained education, like our former governor of Central Equatorial State, Clement Wani. Most of them, if you see some of these politicians, are ex-seminarians. They refuse to go to seminary because the committee say you cannot be a religious leader without giving a birth. So they come back to life. So one thing that I know, that the nation is suffering from generation of our current political elites, which actually, if you look at our Council of States, majority of them are there. In the parliament, they may constitute 40%, I'll tell you, of that generation. So 40% in the national parliament, almost 100% in the Council of States. Or even you can say 90%, because I can't put somebody like First Deputy Speaker Mary Ayen to that generation, because Mary Ayen was a batch of me in the university when we were in Khartoum. I know her very well from the University of Juba. I can't put her to that category. So that category of Mary Ayen may constitute only about 10%. These people have historical personal grievances that we're paying cost of resolving it today. So because of that, I don't believe they are political leaders, believe in building the state and the nation of South Sudan. They are political opportunists who want to use their differences to sustain power or to find a way to power. And they confuse us with this argument around good governance and democracy. Because one thing that I'm wondering, a politician who will stood up today in that generation and say X is undemocratic, he will defect from this group, go to another group. Give him 2 or 3 years. The same politician will defect and come back to this particular person who he have challenged. So if you are to do a tree diagram of defections among our political elites, most of them have defected. This one thing. Another finding I realized, we have quite a number of our leaders who are school dropout, who finish the education. And by the way, education play a big role in life. Some of our leaders are elementary leavers. So what they believe is they believe on survivable by the limited education I have. I must survive. If the limited education I have does not make me to survive, I must rebel. That's another disease we're suffering from, the current generation. Honestly, I have to be honest with you that they're really suffering from that particular syndrome, because they don't see any alternative apart from sticking to politics, like what we can call this grat ficali, like a thick on a dog, that they have no any alternative. The only way is that let me suck the blood of the dog until when I'm fed up, then I fall down, and that's the end of my life. So we have elders whom we call them uncles, and they have their young generations who like to call them my uncle because they want to get a degree or appointment of shortcut. These uncles in politics are people who have no alternative. Their only way is to remain in politics, because some of them are counting their days to grave. And let me tell you, we are full of politicians who are counting their day to grave. Corruption is a game of the day. Lack of good governance is a game of the day. Working towards shrinking civic space so that you don't question them is a game of the day. Avoiding check and balance is a game of the day. They don't like accountability and transparency because they don't see anything ahead of them except the next is my grave. So they want to loot as much as they can today. So, and some of them, that's why you see when they are pushed out of politics, they end up going to grave so fast. So the current leaders, for me, honestly, the current leaders in a peaceful and honorable way have to say, thanks to politics, thanks to history that have made them that now, let them step aside and allow a new blood of a new thinking that comes up. And I will tell you, the few young politicians, I've been recently doing studies and looking into the Council of State and the Parliament, the few young politicians that have found their way through the parties, that because, you know, the revitalized peace agreement have created huge harvest with the few laborers, that even some of the laborers are mobilized through funds, whether they have the merit of that job, but the funds them a job. So you come to realize that they call that Edmund, where you? I'm in Kampala. We have a seat for a political party. You are the son of my uncle. Come and go become an MP. So I found myself the parliament MP without exposure to political science. So some of them already are now working hard and trying to challenge the elders that, you know, the way you're conducting yourself, it doesn't help us. They have been pushed back. There's a quite number of young people who have been pushed back in the Council of State and in the Parliament. And that's why you see there's even people who are provoking somebody like very straightforward, the first speaker in the Council of State, Honorable Mary Ayen, challenging the leadership of the unity state for 2% and for the community from the oil revenue and 3% of the state from the oil. Some people are campaigning that she should be replaced from her position, or some of them are posting for her death threats that we will deal with you. You must know who we are because we are the liberators. You didn't liberate this country in order to become a dictator. You didn't liberate this country in order to control freedom of expression. You didn't liberate this country in order to become a corruptee. You didn't liberate this country in order to become a profiteer of public treasury. No. You are supposed to liberate this country to make people speak freely, to make people check you, check and balance is principle, to make sure you are accountable to people, to make sure you don't embrace culture of impunity. So that's a problem. And this is something that I really have to tell you, that these politicians are lacking those values, and we're going to suffer out of them. And that's why I'll tell you, one of the things right now, if you go to any political event, and this is the recent social research I did, if you go to any political event, and you have politicians who start their politics within this timeline of 1972 until 1983, these people who become politicians in this range. If you go to any tea place, no, South Sudan tea is a very good if you take tea together. If you go to tea place, you just pronounce the word elections. They get awakened like elections is tomorrow. They fear elections like nothing, because they are aware that in 2010, there was a very clear message to politicians. If you remember, all the close allies of Dr. John Garang, late Dr. John Garang, in 2010 elections, most of them were voted out. There are 66 appointees of the president. If you go to the list of the 66 appointees of the president, are renowned names during the struggle. Why? They're exposed because of being corrupt. They're exposed because of confusing the communities they come from. They're exposed because they are not listening to people. They believe that that time the culture of the struggle is everything. They are voted out because they are not connected to the people. So now there's leaders who feel that they are so much exposed that when comes elections, whether they like it, through rigging, whether no rigging, they can't really win anything, because public are telling them, we don't need your generation. So for me, it's a question of taking political responsibility. And part of political ethics is for you to accept that at the current moment, my thinking, my capacity, my knowledge cannot contribute in the progress of my society and the human development. If you're able to give in for that, you are actually a politician. You leave a new blood to come in, and you act as an advisor. That's why even in a car have to have a spare parts. So in politics, we need to have a spare parts. So these current politicians are supposed to be our political spare parts for references, not the driving instruments of politics. Because even in a car, you need to have a brand new part to drive the car. So, but you have to leave a spare part in the store. If you fail to get the drive, you can go back to the spare part and see how was that spare part look like, so I get a good new part to drive the car. So for me, to be sincere with you, we're going to battle a lot. The only thing I will call upon South Sudanese, how much political grievances we have towards each other. Violence shouldn't be an option. Carrying the gun should be an option. And we must resolve our political differences, not through the barrel of the gun. And also, I tell to those people who want to use the gun as a tool of retaining power. Because if you start using the gun as a tool of retaining power, then you're motivating others to use the gun as a tool of taking power away from you. So whether you want to retain your power, you want to access power, guns should not be the option. The only way is let us dialogue. And if for dialogue, let us tolerate. And if we tolerate, you must accept the truth when the majority is. That's why I used to tell some politicians, when 99 people are clapping their hands and you are alone, you have no way out, clap with them. So when the time has come for democratic principle to prevail, you do it. Otherwise, you'll end up like a Bashir, or you end up like Saddam Hussein, or you end up like Gaddafi. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Edmund Yakani. Actually, you have described them accordingly. and you have called them the way they're supposed to be addressed. But the question still remains that these leaders of ours will remain in power for the next 25 years, unfortunately, because believe me, Edmund, and as you know it very well, they are not even sleeping. They are too clever, because when you have mastered the art of eating, it's very hard for you to mismanage the process in which you always acquire that wealth. They are now recruiting young people, especially our generation. They are recruiting them. Each of these leaders, be it President Salva Kiir, be it Dr. Yak Machar, be it Hussein Zalbagia, be it Rebecca Nyandeng, be it Taban Dengai or Wani Iga, all these people, including parliamentarians, they always have their right-hand youth. Even if they said nothing, the right-hand youth must sing their names. That they're the best. And that is the worst, because it will not end by the generation. It will also affect us, and it will continue until the right leadership will be in place, especially from the top. We will wrap our debate later on with the issue of floods and the examinations of 10 states' governance performance. I need you to evaluate them at the end of our interview. And to our viewers, if you are watching us from South Sudan, like my brother is live now in Juba, we understand that even the telecommunication companies have seen that they are also remaining behind in this race of looting. So they're also upgrading their game so that they can be on the same level with our government in looting the citizen. We understand the issue of bundles is becoming another challenge from MTN and even Z. We'll make sure we shorten our interview, at least to save your few MBs for tomorrow. Will you talk about the issue of salary during your speech before, and you informed the first vice president? For us to have peace, these soldiers need their welfare to be well organized. You cannot graduate them, and they don't even have package. During graduation, Mr. Edmund, most of South Sudanese were expecting Mr. President to announce the package of this army, integrated army. Unfortunately, people did not hear anything. And after the graduation up to now, I spoke to some of my colleagues, and nothing has ever been touched since they left John Graham Mausoleum. No any briefing, no even telling them what will be the next step after graduation. So most of them are now wandering around Juba, and very soon what some of you, especially you and some of activists used to say before, that if government is not ready, then we will not be surprised that there will be more roadblock, because this army will use whatever means possible to survive. Kindly, you need to touch little things to do with the economy, because seeing the president remove the former minister of finance and economic planning and brought in Honorable Dear Tong, up to now, civil servant no salary, teachers no salary, army no salary, police, and government is doing other activities, sending more than 10 people to United Nations General Assembly. And the money these people use can even pay the entire army of the nation. Remember now the rate of US dollar is unmanageable. 630 pounds per $1. And if you change $1 million, how much could it be in pounds? The same government is sending a huge delegation alongside with the president to attend inaugurations of His Excellency Dr. William Ruto of Kenya on date 14. The same government who said they don't have money now sent another delegation in the burial of Queen Elizabeth II. Basically, what was the reason President Kira moved Agak Achwil and brought in Diar Tong and also changed the leadership of Central Bank? Was it his intention was to stabilize the economy, or there could be possibly other hidden agendas which are not seen by the citizen, because people are still looking forward and nothing is coming out. Alongside that, you will tell us how possible is it to graduate another batch in Upper Nile region within this month if the government cannot even afford to pay the civil servants and even army. Thank you, Edmund. Within the next 5 minutes, and then we move on.
Thank you very much. You have missed one delegation. Also, we have a huge delegation going. I don't know what that should we say, inauguration or formalizing the land bought in Djibouti port. You know, there's another delegation, and there's a delegation which I think going to Middle East. So
thank you. There are numerous committees.
Yeah, exactly. So there's delegations which are moving from one side to another, and of course, VPs who have been assigned that responsibility of delegation. Only VP Her Excellency Mama Rebecca is maybe left in Juba and Dr. Riek Machar, but the rest have to go somewhere with delegations and bunch and not only delegation and supporting staff. And sometimes supporting staff is more than delegation, doubling delegation. So one person will go with about 10 or 15 supporting staff. And I don't know whether they are not computer literate or whatever this, whether one of them is to polish shoes and all this. These are really a headache. This is a real complete economical headache that even Panadol cannot treat it. I don't know, and there's no Panadol you can find to treat that economical headache. One, let me come to the question of managing our finance and economic sector. Today, Dr. Riek, His Excellency First Vice President, tried to throw back an argument of my call for better salaries for our law enforcement agents and civil servants. He said even if you increase salaries, still the inflation rate of prices will go up. And that's why I was saying, no, give them good money and send them to farming. One, if we want to manage our economy, it's not that we're broke. We are not broke. I'm not an economist, but I'm somebody who fully believes that we are not broke. We are rich. But we don't have economists that manage our economy right from the office of the president to the Council of Ministers. What we have individuals who claim to be economists who have studied economy, and they're using their economical knowledge to filter money into their pockets. Indicators are very clear to show whether we are poor or we are wealthy. If you can have somebody can be looted by a criminal in Kampala over 490,000 US dollars. And at the end of the day, it's confirmed that that money is not his personal money. That's the pension money of our army. So the question is, how is the pension money being governed? How is the remittance? How comes that a staff in a pension fund can withdraw such amount of money for personal use for 90 US dollars? And before, I remember in Nairobi, another 400 or 300,000 were looted from a South Sudanese house. So now, if our officials that are working around the economic and finance sector can have access for such a lump sum amount of money, then the question is our economy in healthy hands? Obviously, no. So we have much money that are not in healthy hands. And that's why the call for financial reforms is more important than removing ministers and governors of central bank. We need to have reforms in the system to control. That's one thing. Secondly, if we can see people who claim that I have this size of civil servants, if was asked, we need to come for head count, then he claims his sake is going to India to avoid head count of civil servants under him. What does that mean? He is dodging proof of physical count of the civil servant, because I know there's a quite number of them who will say, I have this size of civil servants. When Minister of Public Service or Labor say, okay, or Finance, let's go for head count of your physical numbers, then he create a disease. Diabetes, but these days, disease of diabetes and whatever. And then he sacrificed public fund to buy a ticket of going to India or to Dubai to escape, or go to Khartoum and claim, I'm sick, I'm referred to hospital. And even the day he received the information that we are coming for physical head count in the next 2 weeks, you find the following morning he declare a disease and he falls sick. And the only thing is to go to a doctor and the doctor refer him to either India. Even he demand his referral, by the way. It's not a doctor who refers him. He say, doctor, Anna just time quiz, Andra India. I want to go to India, I want to go to Dubai. So he prefer to go. And when he goes there, there's no communication. He cut off his communication. He is in a medical hospital. When he come back, he come with a big bill that nobody will question him, like, bring your bills, because his big pay. If you have that practices, what do you need? You need reforms. So solution to our economic and finance sector is not the change of human resource. Though I'm somebody who believes that some of these human resources are looting too much. It is the systems. Because the corruption we have is not only within the political ranking, even within the civil servants. There are director generals in our ministries that are the real prophets of corruption, that even they can accommodate. If Jesus Christ is brought for them, they can turn Jesus to become corrupt because they own the system of the corruption in the institution. Such elders need to be pensioned, removed, and sent to farm. So until you have reforms in the economic and finance sector, what reforms? First, system that does not allow an individual to play with public treasury. System that does not allow somebody to have a ghost names in the payroll. These are all reforms. System that make check and balance serious issue that nobody can claim to pay. Because if you can assign the funeral of your family member 30 million SSP, this 30 million equals to a salary structure of one state, of one county, and you turn it to become a money from public treasury for the funeral. What does that mean? That's completely economic and financial arrogance that we need to really manage. People are arrogant. So, for me, that's the area. Second thing, we cannot improve our economy without production. But do we really have opportunity to become a productive society? Yes, we have opportunity. The opportunities are what? Why should we get oil revenue and oil revenue for paying for service? Why? We're supposed to use oil revenue to inject to another economic sector. And one of the quickest economic sector we could have injected is agriculture. I remember when I was in the Thanksgiving event of Governor of Lake State, Minister of Roads were there. He was really so much crucified until the level that he was called to the public gallery to respond, because they were saying, we need road. Road is our security, road is our economy, road is access to market, road is our education, road is our health. So we have to come and respond to road. Now look at the way how we respond to road. Oil barrel were allocated for road, but we don't feel the value of the oil barrel. The road reach to Terekeka, it stops. Now imagine you want to feed our communities in Lake State, in the whole Baragaza region. That road from Kampala through Nimule to Juba, from Juba through Terekeka to Baragazal up to Abyei is very principal. And you have barrels of oil that on monthly basis are equated to money of roads. Where is this money going? And they come say, no, there's a huge amount of water. The waters make us challenge. No, the question is not water. The question is that when the money is there, the money can manage the water. Where is the money? And there's no answer for those oil barrels. So what does it mean? It means we are lacking finance discipline in using our public treasury. So even if you remove ministers after minister after minister, now I don't know who is going to be the next minister. Because we have reached a level that those who we believe to be economical experts, we are recycling them. There's a high chance that the previous ministers who have gone that ministry are coming back is very high. Because now we're looking for South Sudanese to become ministers of finance. Maybe we shall knock those tools to diaspora, to start bringing people from diaspora to become ministers of finance. Because this is one of the ministries that in a year, you can replace ministers either 2 times or 3 times. So almost everybody who claim to be an economist and from financial background become a minister. We have finished the technocrats in the Ministry of Finance until we go and bring technocrats from central bank now to become Minister of Finance. So now we're crippling even experts in the central bank because they become ministers. So soon, a long-serving officials of central bank become either governors or become ministers of finance, and still the economy remains as it is. So the solution to the economy, it is delivering the financial reforms that World Bank have called for, that Troika have called for, and even before World Bank and Troika, the South Sudanese have called for those reforms. So that before we go for World Bank may have their own interests and IMF may have their own interests. But as South Sudanese experts have been calling that please don't use oil money for paying for service. Use oil money to inject to the economical productive sectors, which is mainly agriculture. Because even this violence we're having going on in the country right now, these violence are not mainly political. This violence is a manifestation of poverty. Because people are poor, everybody needs a gun in order to survive. Everybody needs a title in order to survive. Everybody needs access to power in order to survive. So if we're able to improve the economy might have become actually a political solution to some of the political grievances. Because some people eat too much, that when they don't find a way of getting much money to eat the food quantity they want, the only way they have to rebel. Some of these revolutions are hunger revolutions, actually. It's not anything. So if you improve the capability of the government in producing and improving the economy through production, we can go for it. And that's why our soldiers, why everybody want to become an army? Because people believe that in army, there's a quickest way of making money. Either through the barrel of the gun or having a uniform, then you're above the law. That's why everybody want to become a soldier. And why when politicians rebel, everybody has to follow politicians? Because they believe that when politicians rebel, they'll come back with big titles, with V8s, and you become if my uncle rebel with a motorbike, and he come back, sign an agreement with the president, and he have V8, I ending up with Land Cruiser, hot top. What's the problem? I will support revolution. Because from motorbike, 6 months in the bush, to V8, and a hot top. So I will enjoy it. So it is a whole commitment of financial discipline among our leaders to improve our economic sector. And I used to give the examples that you have seen how much civil servant, a public official of the government, running away with 400,000 US dollars and keeping it personal and looted. And the country kept quiet like as if there's nothing. No accountability, no discipline, no nothing. And you see there's events here in Juba that these events, if you equate the value of these social events and you translate the budgets used in these social events, the delegations you have mentioned, if we were to sum up, I wish somebody can do a research of the recent 6 or 7 delegations. These 7 delegations will be equal to double budget of the graduation of the Unified Forces. And if we could have translated them to really help our soldiers in improving their accommodation. Let me tell you, our soldiers are not interested in anything. They need just their livelihood for them to perform better. For example, if you can go back to history of people in uniform, prepare for them accommodations that they don't pay rent for. They have a barracks, they're accommodated. In the barracks, their children have schools, they have medical attention. Okay? The oil money can make us do this if we're serious. And most of our soldiers are farmers. As long as they have barracks and every basic service the barracks provide for them, accommodation, health services, education of their kids, they can go and farm. And even they can produce food that respond to the market to cut down prices. You see? So it is a productive mindset within the South Sudanese leaders to improve the economy. We are not broke. We are rich and we can fit. And one example I want to give my brother. 2 days ago, when I was in the Lex event, I was asking people, why are South Sudanese buying milk from Juba and flying to Kampala? If really we're broke. The prices here is relatively better than the price of milk in East Africa. But what do we need? We just need 3 things. We need political discipline, financial discipline, and we need constitutional governance. Our country can surface. And that's why I don't believe, to conclude with, I don't believe on these politicians. And there are some of them who are our generation who believe that South Sudan is young. What is South Sudan is young? This concept of South Sudan is young and you can't equate us equals to Americans. I used to tell people, look at the way when Lowell contributed to build a basketball team. Less funded, but on the top ranking of the group. The highest funded by the governments are at the lower ranking of the group. So if somebody can show the world that with the little money we have, Our basketball team is ranked on the top of the list of the most rich funded teams. Look at the way how we dredge Egypt in the basketball before they dredge our rivers. 101. And that's the article where the powers of the president is. So what young are you talking about? If our basketball players can show the world we are not young, we are already an independent state with enough capable human resource that can embrace development and can show the world we're at the same stage, regardless of our independence, been 10 years, 5 years. But human resource, we're not looking for it. We're not like a country that got independence with 1 degree or diploma holder. We're getting independence where we have enough capable human resource that can make this country rich. And the advantage is that we're applying technology live. We have nothing to destroy because we have nothing that Sudan by then have built. So we apply technology live. What is the constraint here? It's only mindset. Because the mindset of stomach politics have dragged us today. That's what we're debating. We're supposed to talk about technology. Maybe we should be planning going to the moon, not discussing about peace agreements need to be signed between. We discuss about South Sudanese are trying to build either a planet, or we're trying to put our own satellite. We're trying to go to the moon, our technicians, because they're there in the world. Our South Sudanese diaspora are there ready to do anything that you wish to do to a progressive nation. So we're not lacking human resource. We're capable. Financial discipline, political discipline, constitutional governance is our disease. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Edmund. I totally agree with you. This idea of being young should not be the reason to side. And even anybody say that, you just look at the person and you pity for him or her. Otherwise, if you look at the history of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, in 1947, India gained independence as one nation, 3 of them. And then Pakistan, alongside Bangladesh, gained their independence from India. And India said, okay, if you believe that you want to have your own nation as a Muslim society, that you will prosper, and then you go. After attaining their independence, less than 10 years, also Pakistan, Bangladesh broke away from Pakistan. And now Pakistan is still having crisis as we speak. It can also be regarded among the failed states in the world. Some country who gained independence in 1947. Basically, it is not about age, it's not about anything, but it's about leadership. No matter how young you are, and you have proper leadership, you can dance on the same stage with the oldest nation. And the good example was the issue of basketball team, which you just mentioned. And when it comes to the manpower, then South Sudan gain independence when we have enough manpower. By then we had graduates, PhDs, all that, doctors, professors. There were many. Unlike Congo, that gained independence in the 1960s with only 30 graduates across the nation. So basically, the issue of South Sudan is not all about age. It's not all about lack of human resource. It's not all about lack of literacy rate, or literacy rate rather. It's a question of leadership. And that is where our problem is. To our viewers, it seems like our guest lost the contact, but he will be back shortly. Let's wait, and he will come back and talk to us about 2 things. The first thing he will address is the issue of floods. He will brief us about the flood, because flood is becoming a universal problem currently, especially this year. And it has been actually filled up by climate change. And thereafter, he will wrap it up with evaluations of 10 state governors' performance since the beginning of this year. And there we will end our interview. And one thing I need you to do for us is to share this live through your platform, so that your colleague will also get to know what Lagos State Media is doing. And we are always happy to see you supporting us, especially our viewers. And as we are talking about the peace, then among the peace, for you to have peace, there are numerous things that needed to be in place. And that's why we are talking about the integration of the army, the package of the army, the issue of political class and the leadership at large, and the issue of economy. Because if you have empty stomach, it's very hard to smell and it's very hard even to talk. So it's peace in South Sudan need a lot of things. It need our economy to be stabilized. It needs security to be up to date. Thereafter, we can enjoy the peace. Yeah, thank you again. Welcome back. I know maybe MTN is telling you that you have taken long, and they want to to cut
be
you
honest
off.
with you, to your audience, now this is what you call the increase of the tariff. So we are going to jump on neck of MTN. I hope that they're not looting us. So I have to use my phone data now.
I heard that they are
You
taking
see?
the free data off, and then they charge people £750.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine. Basically, you are on the hot spot now. But let's move on to our last two items quickly, because I know when you are using ATM, that is your MBs in your mobile phone, they will not even last for like 30 minutes. So we need to maximize that little time that we have to make sure we finalize them. Can you brief us briefly about the floods issue in Barkaza region, because you were there a few weeks ago, and thereafter we'll come to the evaluation of 10 governors' performance. And then we end our show. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The issue of the floods is becoming real, and almost 8 or 7 states are badly affected, and it's affecting almost every part of the country. And if you follow the climate weather reporting of IGAT, shows us very clear that we are so vulnerable to the climate change, and these floods are results of climate change. So the usual states that we are aware of in terms of floods: Jongole, Upper Nile, Unity, Northern Baragazal. Warap is now badly affected. Now, even as we speak now, some parts of Eastern Equatoria, some parts of Western Equatoria are badly affected. So we have huge impact of the floods. So it's becoming so tough that the little funding we have from the government is not helping our communities. Our communities are really so vulnerable. As I said, the traditional states that we have experience of floods are getting worse and worse and worse. In terms of Jongole, Unity, Upper Nile, Northern Baragazal, and then Warap. It's getting really worse. Warap, almost majority of the states is already displaced. Northern Baragazal, majority of the places displaced. And Unity, you don't talk about it. So our citizens are really...
If that is the case, Mr. Edmund,
yes.
What are the programs being laid down by the government to rescue such citizens? And if not, government is not mindful about them, what are you doing as NGOs? Because you are also acting at your capacity as an executive director of CEPO. Thank you.
You know, one of the things that we have seen from the government in terms of response is that the government say they have allocated $61 million to flood response, and they are subcontracted 25 companies. The unfortunate thing is that these 25 companies up today are not named publicly. You don't get the names of these companies in the public domain. At the same time, we're getting information that these 25 companies, and most of them are owned by our politicians who also approve the money. So we're going to have a bit of another saga, what do you call flood response saga, like the Dura saga or the NC sagas that we have seen in the past. So that's one of the challenges that we're going to face with the issue of the flood. They have allocated money, but we don't see physical response of that money to rescue the lives of our citizens that are affected with the floods. That's one thing. For us as a civil society, we have called for a national support to the floods, specifically those states that are not affected with the floods. We have a program called Citizenship for Flood Mitigation. As I speak now, we have mobilized piece of clauses, and we've been asking South Sudanese to contribute whatever they can to help our population that are in flood. And remember, the most vulnerable category of population that are affected with the floods are the aged people, are the persons with disability, are children, are the pregnant women, lactating mothers, and sick South Sudanese in those communities, because some of those social services have collapsed, like schools, hospital, they're not there. If I can tell you, over 70% of northern Baragazal, 70% of Warab, and now in area like, if you look at Manvolo in Western Equatoria, or Muntri, or some parts of Eastern Equatoria are already in water, that the services that you can call them as health services are no longer there. And we have increase of waterborne diseases in almost 8 states that are affected with the floods. Snake bites. And then there's a cut off of people from the roads, because the water have cut off the roads in terms of accessibility. You might have seen images of humanitarians struggling to access food, but the humanitarians have no pathway because all the roads are destroyed with the floods. So we need to increase. And that's why one of the things I've been advocating for, I was asking our army, our gunships, our choppers that were being used during the 2013, 2016 crisis, we have been chasing ourselves. What to use these choppers now? To fly aid. I wish that our South Sudan People's Defense Force come to the rescue of our people and use their machinery to deliver food and to rescue our communities. Our police service have so many land cruisers that they can use it. There's no criminals. What is it standing close to the Minister of Finance with 6 land cruisers, and you have people who are in floods, and these land cruisers just guide the Minister of Finance because there are so many beggars who are coming to the Minister of Finance to disturb the minister or undersecretary. So I think we need to take responsibility. My call for everybody who's listening here is that time has come for us to extend our hands to our affected population with the floods. The floods is becoming a real human disaster to our population.
Yeah, thank you, Edmund. It's good that you are doing your part as activists and also as national NGOs, because the issue of floods is not only for South Sudan, it's basically affecting a lot of or many countries across the world. And the climate change is not a joke. Only that in South Sudan, we are battling with the issue of agreement. To some extent, we always neglect some of the important issues that our government need to focus and address them. As you put it rightly, what you just mentioned is what the government of Pakistan did last month. Pakistan, the entire region, like Barakazar region, is flooded now. And what government did was to dispatch choppers in order to rescue the citizen of that region, and also distributed food items to those who could possibly be at the higher ground in that water area. Our government can do that. They have capacity to do that. But can you hear the huge amount they have said? Over 60 million US dollars. And the funny part of it is many of NGOs or grants, money being given by well-wishers to rescue the people of South Sudan, always ended up on social media, through radios, through SSBC announcement, and their government pages. But when it comes to the really work being done or execution of this intended purpose, they are always slow to it. Good example, in the year 2014, immediately after the crisis, China came out with a very good project that they are going to construct 100 schools, secondary school across 10 states, which means each state will be entitled with 2 secondary schools, well constructed. And the money were given. Up to now, nobody knows about it. What happened to that money? Whether Chinese withdraw their money or what, nobody knows. The same thing. UNDP actually gave money last month but one for the women's empowerment. Up to now, nobody knows what happened to that money. So it's very sad indeed, because the lack of supervision from the top leadership is killing us, and the corruption is not sleeping in our heart and our mind. It's sad. And to South Sudanese who are watching you, that is a message, and we will spread this message. Let's try to help our brothers back home in whatever ways that we can as a citizen. And we know maybe government is capable of doing some part, but as a real citizen, we also have a role to play. Yeah, leave that one aside. Can you give us briefly about the performance of 10 state governors, especially from last year up to this year, 2021 to 2022 quarter, from Lagos State up to Western Barkazal, and then from Jonglei State all the way to Malacan, and then from Eastern Equatoria to Western Equatoria. At least briefly, I know your bundles are disturbing. Thank you.
Let me start with the region of Baragazal. If you go to the region of Baragazal, the big issues that we expect governors to perform in the region of Baragazal better is one, cutting down or reducing intercommunal violence. And here specifically will be Lakes and Warap, which are much more, and including some parts, not so much, of Abyei. That's the region of Baragazal. And in some states of Baragazal is strengthening transparency and accountability. And that will cover for you Western Baragazal State and Northern Baragazal State that are in Baragazal. So if you see with these particular objective, that if you want to evaluate performance, the only successful governor that was able to reduce communal violence in Baragazal region was Governor Ring. In Lake State, he have reduced it, he have prevented. Yes, peace may not be prevailing, but at least he have reduced the level of incidents that are happening compared to Aleu as a governor in Warapi State. And at least now in Rumbek, you can move. Recently I was in Rumbek, midnight you can move, and previously, before he was there, you can't move in Rumbek. And if you see the reports of the states of Baragazal in terms of intercommunal violence that is deadly, almost lakes disappear for the last 2 months, but still Warap surface with a lot of incidents that are happening in Warap State as communal violence is concerned, and the angle of Abyei still violence is going on and attacks are happening there. If you come to question of transparency and accountability, almost the dispute between Western Baragazal and Northern Baragazal over the call for transparency is almost equal. Service delivery is not yet to that level. And as we speak today, there's a political debate about accountability and transparency in Northern Baragazal, where the chairperson of anti-corruption was locked in by the governor. And of course, it became politically motivated fight for corruption, because the chairperson of anti-corruption is an IO, and the IO says politically motivated because the governor is a SPLM. That's why he locked up. So that's a big issue that's happening. If you go to Western Baragazal, Honorable Sarah Kileto is trying her level best, but she cannot pursue the fight over corruption to the maximum because we find the system is in work. So if you are to rank in Northern Baragazal, who can you equate as a better governor compared to principles of reducing violence, promoting transparency, and making sure that at least citizens have space of questioning and the governor is responsive to citizens? I will say Aleu is a bit very low, because he have really moved so harsh in terms of beating harsh to the communities. He couldn't do that. If you come to Northern Baragazal, the governor is engaging with the people, but there's a big question around how do we fight transparency. And if you come to Western Baragazal with Sarah Kileto, she's battling between the tension of sons and daughters of Baragazal who are split as IO and IG, and they have a big issues there, but she's trying her level best to be close to the people. So if you come there, when you come to Ring, yes, have issues of human rights, and specifically the latest detention of the teachers. And I told him during the celebration that that's something that he needs to improve. But also he's one of the governors that after challenge facing him for a period of time, his Minister of Finance was able to disclose how much revenue they were able to collect at state level. And these governors share a common thing, all the 10. They are unable to disclose the personal income tax. Where is it remitted? To which account? How much is it? It's almost a shared responsibility in the 10 states. All I don't know whether because it's the only source of wealth for them, that's why they're so sensitive. And whoever touches that particular angle, you have a problem. So in Baragazal, I will put Ring really on a competitive governor in terms of performance, because of the Rumbek that we usually know about negativity is become a bit of Rumbek of positivity. When you go to Unity State is still violence is continuing as like previously. And we have seen the recent the very, very, very unfortunate event of extrajudicial killing that is happening and detention that's happening. You go to Upper Nile, the governor is silent, the governor is not visible. Most of the ministers of Upper Nile state of the governor are in Juba, by the way. Most of the time they're in Juba rather than being in Melakal in town. And I think governor even one time raised recently an alarm that his ministers are always Juba based, they're not Melakal based. And the governor is completely silent. You can't hear him in the media. So you find he's silent and he's facing that angle of Kitiguan groups that are challenging him from that side. When you come to Jongole, governor is battling around the personal income tax, deduction of salaries from the strikes have gone there. That's another big issue, but still the triangle of communal violence is happening, is trying to struggle to reduce it. So when you come to Upper Nile region, somebody that somehow you can place from Upper Nile region to act as a competitive governor that can somehow, you can say, can we bring at the seat of competition at the ranking? You can't get it. Why? Dena is having a challenge with the population in terms of revenue, and then issue of deduction that Bakasoro have to go and resolve it. You know, strikes have been going on there. You go to Unity State, almost the same thing. Violence is happening. Check and balances is not easy. You go to Melekal, completely things are down. Violence are going, and even inside Melekal town, what they call targeted killings is going on. We have seen the directors that have launched it. Some people are saying these are enemies of peace killing, but the rule of law and safety and protection of civilians is complete. So almost Upper Nile have equal status of the governor. If you come to Equatoria Bell, where somehow you could have considered a relatively stabilities in, still incidents are happening. Central Equatoria, you have seen the incident in Kajukeji, the incident of that are happening around the logging in Kajukeji, and the question of also being at the center. You could have been dominant, driving the seats, but land disputes is becoming so problematic. Land grabbing, sales out of public lands to politicians is taking dominance in the performance, and being a state of services, the service is not up to date. If you go to Eastern Equatoria, you have the issue of Nimule that merged, and then the Mogali one, which have merged, and also the challenge there about like asking leaders how to go. If you go to Western Equatorial State, Futuyo have come very boldly, but Tombra challenged him, and also you have a challenge of transparency and accountability in the state, and some ministers were saying he's not transparent, and it still become a big problem. So if you come to Equatoria, somebody want to compete, you may somehow lift Futuyo compared to Eastern Equatoria or compared to Central Equatoria, but when you equate him, is all that. So when you come to an outstanding governor in the 10 states, that somehow you can give him an accord, to be honest and sincere to you, our indicators as an organization, rank stand somehow in reducing violence and improving the image of Lex. That's one thing that we need to accord him, because everybody's surprised. What happened in Lex? Today, if you ask, how do you look at Lex? Everyone will tell you, no, this governor, even I will tell you, UN agencies reports have confirmed that violence have dropped drastically. And the term of the percentage highly goes to Lex State. Though I know in terms of, as I said, when come to question of transparency with the use of public resources, all of them have equal ranking. None of them you can say is clean. And one of the indicators is who is disclosing revenue per month. None of them. Ring attempted to do. Ring attempted, and I told him that continue that. And I remember so Apple Paul told him that's one of the quality values, continue that. But all of them, disclosure of PIT, personal income tax, which is actually one of the biggest contributor of state revenue. When you ask that as a minister, you are out. When you ask that as an MP, you are suspended, and this is a shared responsibility. There's no state which can say, oh, we are good with regard to PIT, we disclose our PIT, and our Minister of Finance can be scrutinized by our MPs. Once Minister
Sorry to our viewers. As we mentioned earlier, MTN is not giving our guests from Juba enough time. MTN is really disturbing us. And we were almost at the end of our show. And we'll see whether he will come back to give his last remarks. And we will we'll end the show. And before, as we are waiting for our guest to return back, I'll yield it back to my colleague in the studio, the one who was behind the show or the room to control the show, Abraham Adit Majak. He was actually in Africa, and we are happy to welcome you back as
Thanks.
Lagos State Media once again.
Yeah.
Some of you, as our viewers, may question what happened to Madid for the last almost 3 months. Yeah, he was on the journey, at least to visit the family and also see how Africa is faring, and then he returns. So welcome back, and we are happy that you are here with us. It will make our work easier.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, brother. It's good to be back, and it's good that to be in Africa, spend time with family. So it was a great time that for 3 months, take a break. It's good. So I'm glad to be back here and host a lot of show. It's good that to feed our people information that they want. So because there's a lot of propaganda in social media that we want to assure the public that so the right information so that they can judge for themselves. So it's good. It's good that I'm glad that Mr. Yakani talk a lot of issues affecting our country. So and it's really good that we point those issues out, and it's good that we can held accountability to our leaders. So all the citizens have a right to do so. So silence cannot bring change in the country that we want. So you better speak up. So speak up in through whatever channel that you have. You have to speak up. Tell this leader what you guys are doing in the country is wrong, and people are suffering. Every corner of the country, there's a violence going on, flooding, and hunger is on the way. So all of this. So this leader need to be told whether they want to change something or they need to get out, so that we can bring the new bright faces into the government, so that the change can come. So it's good, and we will keep doing that, Brother Joke, so we can bring a lot of these leaders into the legislature. I know they afraid the media. They don't want to be in media platform, but we must reach out to them. So thank you so much. We will continue doing so. I think Michelle Yakani. So maybe he's getting some of that button in his phone.
Yeah. Thank you, Abraham. Basically, that is our work as the media, and as I normally say to you, our viewers, it is your comments and your participations that keep us going as Lagos State Media, and we will try as much as possible to upgrade our media. Only that some of you may be asking, why are you not inviting some of the government officials? And as Abraham did put it earlier, government officials, they're always afraid to come to us. Some of them keep telling us that I will come, you even schedule the show, and at the last minute they decline. So basically, it is hard to force someone to come and talk to the people. There could possibly be numerous reasons to why they are not willing to come and talk to the citizen, and also to speak for themselves, because there are no agents outside here, be it within the country or outside country, to speak on the behalf of the government, except the government itself. So it is our responsibility as the citizen of South Sudan to do whatever things that we can at our little capacity. Thereafter, we'll be in a position to say at least we are doing some good move. And remember, a country cannot progress without your participation as a citizen of that nation. Anything that you do on your daily basis contributes to the development and prosperous country that you belong. After this juncture, I think Abraham, Edmund could possibly not come back because it's late now in Juba and it's hard to get bundles at late time. Yeah, I think you can give your last words and then we end the show.
So yeah, thank you. So I just want to wish everybody happy Peace Day today. So thank you for watching. We will be doing a lot of show, hopefully. So we will be scheduling another show for the next future. So thank you so much. For those of you in Africa, have a wonderful night. And for those of you in North America, have a good evening and good night in Australia. So have a good one. Thank you for watching Next India.
It's your boy Young Love, I give him that thing. Pancho leg stand, Panchi America, Panji Dwell, Pancho leg stand, Panchi America, Panji Dwell, Ban walk on the lake, Kankara water no watching, Oga level leg, gear, pow, very leg, Panda with Yay, Panchi America, Panya Dwell, Chingatongo Pandon, could you ever buy a check out, Papu Panda Jiro, what they be Dwell venting. Stand Panchi America, Panji Dwell, Pancha leg stand Panchi America, Panji Dwell, Ban walk on the lake, Kankara water no watching, Oga level leg gear.